Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Yemi Cardoso, has blamed the prevailing cash scarcity on poor implementation of the Naira redesign policy. Cardoso spoke at the launch of the World Bank Nigeria Development Update in Abuja on Wednesday. He says the policy review aims to produce an elegant document which would outline clear rules and procedures for navigating the Nigerian money market. Mr. Cardoso, while speaking on the cash crunch plaguing Nigerians, identified the poorly executed Naira redesign as the primary culprit. Joining me now is a professor of finance and capital market, Uche Waleke. Good to see you and thanks for your time. Perhaps we should start from the one that bothers everyone, and we have two items there: the inflation and the scarcity of Naira. Yes. Once again, this is another deja vu we've seen before. But is there a nexus? First, let's talk about scarcity of Naira and how this is coming to bite Nigerians within the same year.
I thought you were going to ask me whether there's a nexus between inflation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe I should even start with that. The number we are witnessing is worrisome in the sense that, unlike in the month of October, when inflation came in at 27.3% year-on-year, and month-on-month inflation declined, what we have seen in the month of November is an increase in both inflation rates year-on-year and also month-on-month. So remember, in October, when month-on-month declined, we clapped and said the pressure was easing. But in November, both on year-on-year basis and on month-on-month basis, we've seen an increase. And that's also why the central bank, should be worried, and it's actually worried. Okay, so when you find that the central bank appears to be tightening monetary policy, appears to be ensuring that the currency in circulation is not way too much. Okay, that's also part of why you are witnessing this cash crunch. All right, for me there are essentially two reasons. The first reason has to do with hoarding, which also was mentioned I think by the central bank, that hoarding is taking place at the moment. Now, you should expect that as we approach the festive season, we're already in the festive season, the demand for cash, will increase. This is what we have known, over time. Liquidity preference in the month of December is really high. Okay, so you expect people, demanding cash and hoarding cash to use during the Christmas period. So that's one reason. Now, associated with that is also the fact that it would appear that there are people that still believe, that still think that the old Naira notes are going to be phased out. Okay, so that's why the central bank came out the other day to say, assure the public, members of the public, that both the old and new Naira notes will continue to be used even beyond December. But I have a feeling that that message hasn't really reached the the grassroots. So the central bank should continue to, come up with such messages.
So the message should be ongoing, continuously.
Oh yes, there are people that still feel that the old notes be phased out, and so they're also hoarding the old notes. Now that's one reason, hoarding. Now the second reason has to do with what I just told you about inflation. Central bank is worried that inflation is going up. Central bank is also worried that exchange rate is rising, which was why the CBN governor, when he appeared before the joint session of the National Assembly, not joint session of the Committee on, Banking, was saying that he expects that in 2024, okay, while he thinks that the pressure, inflation pressure and exchange pressure will continue in the short term, but before the end of 2024, that this pressure will moderate. Okay, now what that tells you is that the central bank intends to use all the tools at its disposal to ensure that money supply is reduced. Right now, we are told that currency in circulation has once again hit 3.4 trillion naira. Currency in circulation. Meanwhile, in February, during the currency redesign exercise, it came down to just 1 trillion. Now it has also hit 3.4 trillion. So the central bank is worried that currency in circulation is much, and the more you have too much money circulating outside, the more you make monetary policy transmission difficult for the central bank, which is why if you go to, I actually spoke to some managers of some banks, and they tell you that the fact of the matter is central bank is not supplying to them as much cash as it used to. So that's why if you go to banks today, a lot of banks have imposed withdrawal limits. You can't withdraw more than 20,000, and so on. That's because of the fact that central bank is not supplying as much cash as it used to. That's on the one side. And also on the other side, deposits are not coming in. People are not bringing in, these deposits, as part of this hoarding I talked about, this period. So you have a situation in which the central bank is, more or less also trying to restrict what comes out. Central bank is not printing money at this time.
Sorry to cut you here, Professor Waleke. You've raised two big points here. First, it would seem that the message of continuity ad infinitum, which the central bank issued, is not enough, and it hasn't trickled down to every sphere of our national life. That's and secondly, it would seem, listening to you, that the cashless policy has failed.
No.
Because if it has worked, somehow this rush for cash all the time shouldn't be our problem, should it?
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't, and that's why the central bank too, has continued to encourage people to use alternative channels. Particularly, for example, I've not been to the bank, in many months because I use electronic channels. So central bank, has continued to say that, and I want to, suggest that campaign must continue. And why
that's campaign number 2 that they must sustain.
Yes, and why the central bank is doing that, efforts should also be made to ensure that the banks, do everything within their means to also reduce the incidence of network failure. Okay, that's also one thing that discourages people from using those channels. So you find them resorting to cash. All right, but again, as I said, cash is usually associated with the spending cash associated with periods like this. We are moving into we are Yuletide and New Year, so you should expect that a lot of people will be demanding cash. That's why you find the hoarding. So the point about the central bank also ensuring that money supply, particularly the currency in circulation aspect of it, is not so high, is in line with the new stance of the central bank. Okay, the idea that money supply is also one of the things fueling inflation, and therefore if they must wrestle it, especially when they have a target. Central bank governor has said now that his approach will be inflation targeting. Inflation targeting is nothing but identify an inflation rate you want to target, and do everything to make sure inflation rate revolves around that. In 2024 budget, inflation rate was put at 21.4%. As we speak, inflation rate is 28.2%, according to the recently released number. So the central bank governor will now have a duty to ensure that before the end of 2024, inflation rate actually comes in at 21.4. And how will he do that? On his own part, it's only going to be through tightening monetary policy, ensuring that there's not too much money in circulation. But again, it must be recognized, it must be said, that factors driving inflation in Nigeria today are not entirely monetary. You have significant aspects of these factors that are non-monetary, supply side factors, which is why until we deal with issues around insecurity, until we deal with transport issues, energy issues, electricity, for example, the fact that we are still importing fuel, until we have our refineries working, inflation rate may not significantly come down. So what I'm saying is, it's not just a battle for the central bank, it should also be that of the government. The two must work together to ensure that inflation rate comes down. And
Prof, listening to you, it tells one big story here. Love him or hate him, it's not about personalities or of the former central bank governor, but it's about those issues you've just raised.
Absolutely.
Professor Uche Waleke, a delight speaking with you tonight.
Thank you, Alaide. Thank you.